Once again, we are going to start today with a topic, a very important topic with Chantal Donaldson. But first of all, remember that we are recording right now, so just be reminded of that. We are also sharing the session on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitch. Okay, so let's begin with the webinar for today. Today's topic is how to get away with murder of a product. Funny topic, with the lead PM at Ubisoft, Chantal Donaldson. But first of all, let me introduce myself a little bit. This is Jorge Arna. I'm Associate Product Manager here at Global People. I have more than 6 years of experience working as a business development manager, and I've been participating in some products related to B2C or B2C here at Global People since I started last year. Let me remind you, in case you are new here, what we do is exactly our mission is to help companies to discover and deliver great products faster. We help those companies managing all this unglamorous work with PM on an interim basis. We aim to onboard fast, align teams, and deliver outcomes very quickly. We also empower our product management community and share knowledge. Generally, as you can see with these webinars and also with the Telegram channels that we have, and we have right now almost 10,000. Well, no, we have 10,000 members in our PM community. But before we start, I want to ask you those two questions so you can get familiar with the topic. The first one is, what will you look at to decide if the product should be terminated? With the answers are performance, profitability, growth, user feedback, and other. The second one is, what do you think would be the hardest part of terminating a product? A, convincing management to do it. B, collateral damage to teams and colleagues. 3C, restart from scratch, and D, others. So please, if you don't mind, we would love to know what are your opinion about those two questions. In case you are in Zoom, please use the poll option, to put your answer. And if you're not in Zoom, please use the chat to give your opinion about those two questions. Thank you so much. Remember that we are going to use this poll at the end of the presentation in the QA, so we can ask directly to Chantal what she thinks about the answers. Okay, so very important to you to answer this poll. Oops, I think I did something wrong. No, okay. Can you see my screen right, Mansour? Yeah, okay. Okay, so should we go? Fatima said, okay, thanks, Fatima. Okay, so what we have is, for the first question, what will you look at to decide if a product should be terminated? The profitability is the main option, the main answer. And for the second question is, what do you think would be the hardest part of terminating a product? We have a 50-50 at least in Zoom when it comes to convincing management to do it or collateral damage to teams and colleagues. We will take the answer from the other channels, and we will ask to Chantal what she thinks about those two answers. Okay, thank you so much for answering the poll. Then, thank you so much for your patience. Now, Chantal, is your time. I'm gonna stop us sharing my screen, and it's your turn to explain us how to get away with a murder of a product. Thank you so much.
Awesome. All righty. So let me share my screen, and I'll. If you can confirm, can you see it in full presentation mode?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, perfect. Great. Well, thank you so much. I'll just put my timer on as well so I know how I'm doing. So yeah, thank you so much for having me tonight. And the topic is how to get away with murder of a product. It's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek, I think Metzer called it a bit of a Hollywood title, which I loved. But if you're talking in product language, we're also talking about how to get away with a pivot, because that's what it is, right? It's stopping something and starting something else. This is the story that I want to share with you today. But it still means stopping something that people have been working on, and it's not necessarily something that is easily done on an organizational level or on a kind of people and emotional level as well. So something about me. So I'm Chantal, I'm lead PM at Ubisoft. I work on internal tools, so communication, collaboration tools that our employees use to share knowledge, information, communicate with each other, and so on. And I've been working in product for about 8 years. I've worked across government, B2B, as well as NGOs before I arrived here at Ubisoft. And my particular passions in product are user-centered design and agile principles, and generally kind of how we work as product teams, as well as product strategy and product communities, which I also get involved in internally. And I'm based in Paris in our headquarters. So really today I want to share with you a story, but the kind of backdrop of my talk is this story, even though the product itself is probably not as important to kind of the learnings, and I'm going to try and abstract as much as I can to also make it useful for everyone to kind of think about it in their own context. So the product that I want to talk about was this. It was meant to be a personalized starting point for employees to easily find and access news, key information, and tools to do their job efficiently. So it was a way to really simplify the way I can access all the things I need on my kind of in my day-to-day job, and ensure that kind of it's easy accessible. I would imagine I would go there in the morning, start my day, see my news, my emails, etc. It would simplify everyone's routine and solve all problems we have in terms of navigation and findability, etc. So it was a really tempting idea because it was standalone, so you had lots of potential to kind of calibrate it. But when I arrived, I started having a few doubts in terms of its kind of how it was working and whether it was actually addressing the underlying need. And at the same time, we also had our design lead join. So she arrived at the same time as me as Ubisoft, Anne-Audrey. So I want to give her credit because a lot of this we did in kind of in tandem as well. And as we built our relationship, we realized that we had similar doubts about the product because, we were newcomers, so we had a fresh eye on this, and we're like, okay, interesting, but we didn't want to come in as like, experts and come in, and explain why this product might not work. Really, it was important for us to ground all our kind of argumentation in evidence. So together we built this case. And a small bit of background as well. So we had some user research that had been done previously on the product. So, it was built on kind of some solid foundations. Though what we found, and this is just kind of important for context, is that there was a leap of faith taken between there's a problem and how we solved it. And there's a very particular reason why. So they identified a problem and they said, okay, we need to build something to solve this problem in terms of, I can't find my things. As a newcomer, I want to know where I can find what and what tools I have at my disposal, etc. And then having a thing like a personalized page where I could kind of have access to all these things. The thing is, at alpha, so in prototyping stage, it was really, really hard to kind of simulate live data. So you can't simulate an integration without building it because you wouldn't have real data in there. And so it was really difficult to test its utility until you got to a place where you had already developed some stuff. So I think that was part of the thing that also led to this situation where, once we got to the solution, it wasn't, we found that it wasn't solving the problem adequately enough. So, but how did we get from kind of observing this to actually saying, okay, let's stop the launch? So, and for the little story, at the stage it was at, so it was when I arrived, it was kind of nearly ready for launch. So the idea was another few weeks, maybe a couple of months, to kind of get to finish what was envisioned to be the MVP. So it was ready for launch, and this is where we came in. So as I said, what we wanted to do is really gather the evidence that we needed to build a strong case that we were convinced that, let's not do this, but come with evidence. So the first thing we did was a private beta, where we wanted to collect some quantitative data to see how the product would do in the wild. And we chose, 100 odd users across the company that would represent diverse enough users to give us a kind of a good spread. And we made sure that they were aware of it and they knew kind of it was going on, it was available to them, and explained what kind of how we would probably do a marketing communication about the tool in general. And so what we were hoping to see is for people to come and use it every day. I mean, that was the ideal. Our North Star was very much around kind of daily returning users, and that's what we wanted to achieve. So we had 0 daily returning users, and only one single one kind of came back several times. So it's quite a wake-up call in terms of what we were expecting in terms of our expected kind of result. To complement what our understanding of what's going on, we also conducted some user interviews to understand, kind of what was going on specifically, and get qualitative data to back that up. So we conducted a mixture of 2 things. So user interviews to understand our users' daily habits and tools, so they know kind of to understand what their context is, the tools that they use, and see how much that fit with what we had kind of built in the tool. And we also combined that with the user test to see was it also about kind of how we kind of put things in place, and seeing if it was around usability. And what we found was that users had already a whole bunch of ways of solving the problem that we were trying to address, and actually with things that were way more powerful or way more accessible than what we could build, at least like in terms of the kind of the cost benefit of kind of building something that would solve sufficient problems for our users. So like, for example, like favorites in your browser were kind of much more accessible, and they were there all the time, as well as dashboards and like tools similar to Jira, where you could craft your own little dashboard that would show you all the things that were going on in kind of on your project. So this is the kind of things that obviously we couldn't replicate. And finally, we also conducted some design workshops to really build the case, and we wanted to understand what would people expect from a tool like the one we were working on. So kind of we were pretending we were still at an early design stage for that purpose of that workshop, to kind of get an idea of those daily habits and specific needs, because really we wanted to confirm what we heard in the interviews, because we didn't conduct that many, in terms of those specificities and whether they were so different. And again, we went quite wide in terms of the type of people we spoke to, because we can kind of choose kind of things much more granularly in terms of our user research, because we have we know where people work, the jobs they do, how long they've been in the company, etc. Mm-hmm. And we really found that daily tasks were so varied that it would take a really highly customizable tool to create actually enough value for people to want to come back. So this was our case. So this was the kind of the evidence gathering phase, which I think is important, but I think it's also probably the obvious part of this. It's like, you want to, you're a PM, this is the kind of stuff you need to do. Although sometimes, it's not necessarily easy to get the buy-in, but but I think what's important in what I want to talk to you about is the kind of next thing. It's like, we can confirm that we must change course, but actually, how do we bring people along? And that's really what's kind of the crux of this. It's about how you then manage that for different people. So firstly, so the 2 main groups we needed to really manage that change for. And so one, it was the leadership team, because they're ultimately responsible for the team's work. And we need to make sure that they're aware of what we're doing, and bring them along this journey of accepting that we're not going to go along with the launch. And what we needed to look out for in that context was that, well, one, evidence would get us most of the way. So that was great. You can kind of show, okay, here's what we found, here's what we need to do. But actually, there's other things that we also need to take into consideration, because there may be strategies that this decision may affect. Another team could have halted a development because you're working on a thing, and those interdependencies are important, and your leadership might be more aware of those kind of things than the product team. Also, potential emotional attachment, how much they would have defended the product to their stakeholders, their leadership, etc., as well as sunk cost bias. Like, we've invested in this tool already. Like, maybe we should just launch it. I mean, let's go. So, kind of seeing how that kind of goes on, also like what their perception is, and kind of be aware of these things. And so how to approach those discussions. So I made sure that I communicated an incremental sense of certainty, so that it was the right decision to stop the launch. So at first it was talking about, having some doubts, wanting to do some exploration, getting some information, etc., talking about risk, until like kind of it goes to the recommendation stage. So really adapting my language to the stage at which the leadership team is at, and then kind of getting them to a place where they're like confident that your recommendation is the right one, but not going from, hey, everything's great, to, hey, our recommendation is to stop. So that was kind of this incremental journey. And always coming from a place of evidence gathering, obviously. Like, we're not just, this isn't my opinion. I don't want to have a debate on opinion. I want to come with evidence, because otherwise it's really hard to have a conversation about this. And I think what was important here is that we came with a recommendation of what we needed to do instead. So it wasn't just, hey, this isn't working out, too bad. But actually we're like, okay, we know there's a problem, but the thing that we thought about didn't quite work out. So here's what we think would work much better. And actually, having learned from this, we're much more confident in the second option as well. So the learnings that we have from this journey are also really important. So that's the leadership team, and that kind of all went quite well. And then, of course, there's the team. And I would say this is something I probably would have overlooked earlier in my career. I think I thought way more mindfully in this stage around how to bring the team along. So who they were in this scenario. So we had a junior PM, a developer, UI designer, content strategist on top of the designer and me. And we wanted to make sure that they were part of the change. Like, that we didn't want to impose it. We want to make sure they had agency in the whole process, and kind of give them real ownership of that decision. And that wasn't just imposed or coming from people who also had recently joined. So we kind of, they had been working on this. They needed to also own that decision. And it was a real opportunity for growth, because undergoing a pivot isn't necessarily a very nice thing, but it's also a great moment to learn, and to kind of on a future product you're working on, you might be thinking, oh, this reminded me of the time where we need to pivot. And so kind of putting also that kind of mentality into the team. So so great opportunity to bring them along. And so how to do that? So really it was about making it gradual, like really kind of, again, like the leadership team, kind of bringing them along that journey, coming from a place of evidence gathering, and involving them at every step, not just informing them, but really making them part of kind of, what data do we want to collect? Okay, what are the things that would tell us that we are going into the wrong direction with this product? Analyzing the user research together, but also making it a positive experience. So kind of really fostering team spirit, and making sure that we're talking about this thing as as something that we're proud of as well. So that isn't a okay, we're ending this, or it was really important. We were kind of getting the team to own this great decision that we wanted to take. And to illustrate this, I simplified this change curve that someone might go through as they're kind of taking in new information and kind of dealing with it. And along this curve of like kind of shock of receiving that information, and then being like, oh, well, maybe that data we're collecting isn't quite right, or maybe, kind of finding reasons why it might not work, to going to as, oh my God, what did we do? To, okay, well, what else have we got going? And then we're like, okay, we're on this new trajectory, we're good, and the past is behind, and now we're moving on towards something more positive. But so we wanted to make sure really we had kind of we got them through that curve through different methods. So firstly, it was around, so at the first step is providing that information or the data around how the product was being used that the team could consume in their own time. So they had access to the dashboards. We would push them the user research findings before our meetings so they could react on their own and they could absorb that information in a place where they didn't need to react towards the team, or kind of, they had time to kind of absorb that information. Then in terms of the kind of next stage, it was about analyzing the information together and coming to a place of objectivity. And we're not trying to, maybe the information is wrong, maybe, it was really trying to make the conversation as rational as possible, and that we did it because we did the analysis together. And then for the exploring stage, what we really wanted to avoid here is to put the team in a situation where, okay, this didn't work out. What do we do now? Because it's quite a scary thing to start with a blank page. And depending on how experienced you are, you might be more or less comfortable with that. So what we thought about was to provide different options. So we put the team in front of 4 options to think about what might be a best course of action. One of which was actually to continue with the launch, and one was to start and pivot really on something different that would still address the problem. And then there were 2 kind of in-between options as well. And that way they could compare something very specific and really kind of have a more constructive kind of analysis of what we needed to do. And then finally, in terms of the last step is really around kind of a post-mortem, coming to a place of acceptance, feeling proud of the decision that we're taking. And that's the last thing I want to share with you as part of this presentation, which was really about reframing failure and talking about this within the team. So we did a post-mortem where we wanted to explore how we all felt about stopping the launch and really kind of share our feelings and gave everyone the chance to say how they felt. And we talked also about failure and the role that it plays in product development in general. That is actually really a critical part, and that, even the biggest companies you can think of have had products out there that didn't work out and got stopped, and for many reasons. And it doesn't say anything about you as a team, and actually taking that brave step of stopping something shows that you're doing the right thing. And this is what we wanted to come out of as the message with the team is we can celebrate that we did the right thing and really kind of finish with a message of pride rather than kind of like, okay, so starting with something new is also kind of being really at ease with the decision that we had taken. And so there's one group I didn't talk about, which was our beta users, because obviously they had tested the product and they might have been like, okay, what's going on with this tool? Like, has anything worked out? So we needed to inform them to say, hey, okay, we're not going to go ahead with the launch, etc. And I took the decision to be very kind of candid with them and explain what had gone on. So, hey, this is what we built. This is what we wanted to do. This is what we learned. And therefore, we're not going ahead with it. And we're instead focusing on this other thing, which is to reinforce a product that we already kind of have and explain the reasons why. And that was, I think, the scariest part of this whole thing, because you're kind of putting yourself out there, being really vulnerable to users, who in my case are my colleagues, right? So I'm kind of also quite intimidating to send it to strangers who I work with. And actually, so that was like probably the most heartwarming part of this all is their reaction. And it was really positive, actually. And people were kind of, very, very, as you can see, I put a couple of quotes from our survey at the end. They were really kind of, happy that we had stopped it. And they were like, it wasn't bad work or a bad idea, but, you found it didn't work and you made the decision to end it. And this whole prevention of having another kind of abandoned project because that didn't work out, and actually stopping that before it goes out. So that was really great to see, and also really confirmed for me that it was good to be communicating openly about these things. Sorry. So this was kind of all the things that happened, how we managed it, etc. And I want to finish on a couple of lessons learned. So one thing is also that confirmation bias was really strong. And I think amongst the people who had worked on it, because you're so into it, you're working on a thing, you're delivering, you're thinking about the small problems, it's really hard to step back and kind of it was not that easy to see the things that were showing that this wasn't going to work out. It was great once we had the private beta, because that was kind of numbers you couldn't argue with, but it was interesting to see to what extent confirmation bias was strong. And it's a great reminder that we're all subject to this, and when you're really involved in a thing, it's something we can all look out for. The second lesson is around being patient. I think there were moments where I personally just felt, okay, we're confident we should stop. Let's just go. But actually leading people through change takes time, and kind of building their acceptance, means that you need to take a step back, really put your ego to the side and not go like, hey, I'm coming here with my savior modus and I'm going to tell you all what's what and how it's done. It's really important to listen to people, let them go through that change, and kind of bring them along that journey. And yeah, patience is important in that. And I think it's also never too late to challenge. We were in a place where we had already, developed things, and we had, invested time. We're always talking about failing fast, and ideally you want to, stop a thing that's not working as early as possible, and that's what we're always trying to do. But that's not always the case. And sometimes we work on a thing and it's been a while, and then we realize that maybe we should challenge this. And it might feel awkward and probably quite uncomfortable to go out and challenge something that's kind of where there's already a momentum behind. But I think it's never too late to challenge. Obviously, always coming from a place, of evidence gathering and kind of building a strong case. But it's, it's our role as product people to make sure that we're delivering value. And if we're feeling that there's doubts that we're not doing that, it's our role to go in and check that we're doing the right thing. So it's about feeling confident that it's never too late, and even if it might feel like that at that moment. So that is me and my presentation. And I'd love to hear if you have any questions for me, or kind of want to kind of share some stuff around this topic as well. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much, Chantal, for the presentation. Well, first of all, I love the kitty background thing. And second of all, I love when you mentioned reframing failure, which is something very important. Sometimes you're super scared when you have this word like failure, but the real question is what we do next, and to have a very positive mind about that, and acceptance, it's very important. Thank you so much. Okay, well, let me share my screen again so we can start with the second part of the presentation. We are going to start soon with the Q&A. In the meantime, so you can have enough time to think about the questions you want to ask to Chantal, I'm going to present some things related to product people, so you can have a better idea about what we do, who we are, and how can we help different, your company as a product company. So those are some cases that we are very effective of working daily with the clients. For example, the first case, if you got found in a need to grow your product team by 150 PMs. The second example is your PM is going to parental leave, which is something that happens and happens a lot, and we expect that happens too much. And you need someone with the expertise that could be on board super quick. The third case is the PM is leaving and left your company. You need some time to restructure the staff, and you need a person that could lead and continue and maintain the mission in that period of time. The fourth is you have a temporary initiative that is important and urgent, and you don't know how to tackle that problem with the right expertise. We can help with that part, since we have almost 30 people working as product managers here that with different expertise in different industries. And finally, you like someone to apprise the product team or processes. As Chantal said, sometimes, when you are working very close to the thing, it's difficult to get, step back and see if we can improve in some ways. We can help you with that. So that's why it's very important that you can contact to us in case you need help filtering or improving some process from your current product team. Those are some positive feedbacks from our clients. As you probably know, or in case you don't know, we have some clients here in Europe or in the UK, like Tire, Zalando, etc. And those are from some of the examples from people that recommend us working with them on some missions. Here's the team. Well, I'm here. You can see, as you can see, we're almost 30 people. We're He has 3 people working as a product managers, from APMs to senior product managers, helping companies in different type of missions and objectives. And if you feel that you can be included in the team, that, as you can see, is very varied. We come from different backgrounds and also nationalities. You can send us your job application, which is the second point that I'm going to talk again. We are hiring product managers, and we are hiring senior business development manager. In case you are very interested in be part of your team, the team, you can send us your application going to productpeople.join.com. And you will have a look at it, and we are happy to receive job applications coming from APMs to senior product managers. Last but not least, the senior business development manager open right now. We are looking for a person to spread Product People's mission by growing our client base and retaining our existing clients. If you feel that you are the right person and you want to start working with a company that is in a growth phase, send us your job applications using the same link that I mentioned before. Okay, thank you for your patience. If you remember, we did the poll, which we asked about what are the matches, or what are the, we can go back to actually, so we can remember that part. What will you look at if you to decide that product should be terminated? With performance, profitability, growth, user feedback. After checking the answers from the poll and also from YouTube and Twitch, profitability is the top answer. So Chantal, do you have any opinions about that?
I also thought it was profitability for sure. So I think, that's the basics of it. We were operating in a context where we're building internal tools, so we don't obviously make profit, but I think that's a way to know that it's going to work, because if you don't have profitability around your tool or kind of sufficient value, I think for me that's the baseline. So I feel
great. And the second one was, what do you think will be the hardest part of terminating a product? The most voted was collateral damage to teams and colleagues. So
yeah, I guess that's also the thing I thought in my presentation, right? Restarting from scratch is something that we do in general, right? So I think it's the more enthusiastic part. And I think the collateral damage to teams can be a tough toll, especially if you're highly invested in something. We often attach a lot of our emotions and energy in our work. So I think, I would definitely agree with that. Although sometimes the management kind of convincing can be tough as well, depending on kind of how your company is structured, etc. So yeah, definitely not to be underestimated.
Okay, so let's go with the questions. Let me check the chat so we can see if there are any questions coming from. Rushi on LinkedIn said, okay, great presentation. Thanks, Chantal. Question. In the example, it's almost accidental that we have discovered this product should die. The research and MVP testing at the beginning could have probably prevented some cost. But what would you recommend for a product that started out well, but seems to be no longer as useful? For example, new products replaced to core purpose. How to continuously identify this depth and clear?
Well, that's a very long question.
Yeah, if you feel, I'm gonna copy and paste the question in the chat.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So
because as I was listening to the
there
end,
you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, maybe to the beginning, what I was saying is, because of the nature of the product, it was quite hard to test. So this was MVP, right? So, but we had already developed the thing. Ideally, you want to be testing something that is at a prototype stage that doesn't cost you much to develop. But as I said, it was really hard to test kind of the value of it without live data, because you could always say, well, without live data, you can't really see the usefulness. So yeah, generally, I would say, test with as little as you can and kind of testing your hypotheses as early as possible. So that would be my first thing. And then what would you recommend that's but seems to be no longer useful? Yeah, I think it's similar, right? So legacy products, things that are kind of, have been built a while ago and might not be kind of that useful, also can be quite a drain on a company. You're having to maintain things, especially if it's a bit old. I think a similar approach would be needed, right? To see, okay, how much value is this actually bringing, and thinking about, can we replace it? And I think ideally we'd like to continuously identify debt and clear it, but it's, debt is something we have to live with, because otherwise, without debt we wouldn't have any product, right? So you can't have for one or the you have to always have it. And I think I guess an important point here as well is that we can't spend all our time in research and making sure that we're doing the right thing, because we need to be delivering, we need to be doing stuff. And I think it's about finding a balance between this inertia that constantly researching and kind of asking yourself, are we doing the right thing? Because you could be asking more and more and more, but also trying and putting things out there and testing it in the wild. And I think it's the delicate art of product management is about finding the balance between the two, where you still have a bias towards delivery, but making sure you're delivering value.
Okay, well, thanks. That was okay, because the question was long and the answer was answer. But thank you for clarifying that part. We have a request here in the Zoom. Can I unmute and ask a question? For sure, Gaurav, go ahead, just unmute and you can ask her directly.
Thank you very much. Am I audible, please? First of all, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Fine. Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Chantal. I enjoyed it, especially the lessons learned, because it really hits home for me. My question is, if, let's say, this tool or this product was actually being used by external revenue-paying customers, whether it's B2B or B2C, and then think about the scale, it could be tens of users or maybe 100,000 users who would be using it, how would your approach be different?
That's very interesting. I mean, I think the approach, I think, in revenue generating products, I always think is a bit easier, because you can bring the value of your product back to actual kind of money, right? You can see how much is this product kind of bringing to the company versus how much you're spending on building it. And so seeing of, do you have a potential, depending on how many kind of revenue generating, like how revenue generating your product is, seeing, does that outweigh the cost that we're putting into, and does that match what the company's strategy is? And do you have potential for growth? I think I would look for both of those things. I think if you're not generating much revenue right now, but you're thinking, your potential for growth is huge, then, still continue. But, if that kind of plateaus, I think that's when I'd be asking really serious questions of, is this the right strategy, or should we go back into a research phase and really understand what could drive revenue kind of more effectively?
Thank you. Thanks for your response. The reason I asked is because I have been involved in some of these exercises where we pivot from one solution to another. And in my opinion, from the questions that were answered before, I think one key option that was left out is, you look at what is the impact on your end customer base. I mean, growth, profitability, all of that is fine. But if you change or you pivot to a new solution, and that ends up, annoying a majority or your target base or your niche customer base, then whether it's growth or profitability, then you've lost it, because you've lost your customer base itself. So I've seen that in a number of examples. That's why I brought it up. So, but thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for sharing, you too. I have a question from Henrietta from our chat. They put it in the Zoom chat, which is basically, did this experience have any long-lasting effect on how you approach product development at the company in general? You can go with this one first.
Yeah. And how did that? Yeah. Well, I think it was a great opportunity to also share with the rest of the product teams. So it's not something we did obviously on our side and didn't tell anyone about. So I think it was just reinforcing the kind of messages that we try and discuss as a product team in general, like kind of good product practice, always questioning the way we work and making sure, we get better every day. And so I think that long lasting in that, we have a concrete example to talk about. And I think that's always nice because you can always talk about things in general and in theory, but actually bring it back to an example that is specific to us. I think that was great because it kind of also, I think stories are things that really put in your kind of keep it in your memory. And so I think in that sense, like these kind of events of pivots are great for kind of having lasting change of kind of better product practices.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Before we go with the next one, I want to ask you one question. Now, your example in the presentation was when you are a newcomer, but what happens when you are not a newcomer?
Yeah, I think we were in quite a privileged position, right? Because we hadn't worked on it. So, I guess my ego wasn't at all involved in what had been developed. So it was much easier to be objective. I think I've definitely been in a place before where I had worked on a thing and then realized, oh, okay, we probably need to pivot. And I think so. I would have several pieces of advice in that. I think firstly, really talk in the language of risk and risk mitigation, and not rather than kind of I have doubts or kind of don't make it emotional, make it as objective and as rational as you can. Talking with people you trust, like starting with someone who, and you might find that other people have doubts as well. So I think that's especially in a place where you have pressure to deliver. People might not feel confident to share that they don't feel so confident in a thing. So I think starting with those kind of small conversations, and also I think being kind to yourself, realizing that you're working on a thing that you think maybe we should change is never a nice feeling, but it's actually okay to get to that conclusion at the point at where you get to it. And when something feels right, you always think, why didn't I think about that 5 months ago? And but I think that just means that you're probably on the right track. And I think it's also kind of being kind to yourself, that kind of taking the right decision when you can.
Okay, well, that was great. Yes, that's true. And I like the point that you mentioned about start talking with the person that you trust at the beginning, so you can be sure that you are not maybe raising a problem or having doubts on talking with a person that could be like, hey, this is not the right thing that you are telling me right now. We should not move forward to this idea and so on. So okay.
And I think sometimes in product teams, like a PM's voice can sometimes be it casts a longer shadow than you might realize. I think, or they might put a lot more kind of value to your opinion. I think it depends on the culture as well of your organization, but I've definitely seen that happen. And so it's about being careful kind of how you share that message.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we split the previous question because it was kind of a long one. So the second question was, was this experience discussed with other product managers and stakeholders? Yeah, we shared that within the presentation actually. But the thing that the last one is important. Did you formulate maybe some internal policies for evidence-based product development?
I think, we generally have kind of our kind of guidelines around how we develop products, and so evidence-based kind of decisions are a big part of that. So the case study didn't really lead to anything specifically being written down, but those things definitely exist and are constantly also challenged and rediscussed in our product group. So I think they're important. As much as there's information externally, I think having those that common knowledge about how you do product is extremely important for like a product community internally.
Yes, aligning the way how the company is working right now and how you intended to work is super important. And you mentioned that you were new and the other person was new, so yes, that totally makes sense. Okay, let me check if there are any other open questions here in the chat. Okay. Yeah, Henrietta asked, actually we asked her questions. The message, thank you for Henrietta says, thank you for the answer, Chantal. Also great presentation. Okay, that's good. I like that people is saying thank you. In the Zoom chat. Wait, okay, we have one from Fatima. I'm wondering how you manage the changing curve specifically, the hardest part, and how long exactly takes time to do such pivot and measure the impact of the replacements.
Yeah. So I think, I explained the steps I took in terms of the change curve. So it was really about kind of thinking about, I think reading about this, I mean, it was quite useful. I think thinking about change management in general and how a person goes through that change. So, and based on that, we kind of thought about the activities around that. I think in terms of how long it takes, I mean, how long is a piece of string? It's a tricky one. I think it depends on how quickly you can get that data. And sometimes it's not very quick, and sometimes it is. So I think the faster you can get things to confirm or deny an assumption, the easier it will be to do a pivot. But part of that is also, I think, in a previous situation where I had a pivot, maybe on a smaller scale, I think the hardest bit was kind of the leadership discussions and getting everyone on the same page. So getting the data was really fast, but then actually kind of speaking to that person, explaining the case, getting them to agree and talk to each other. So yeah, different things can take different times depending on the circumstances.
I do have a question about, you mentioned that for this case, the product was online for 2 months, okay? And you mentioned also that the returning, people, monthly, daily active users returning to the app was 0. But that number is the number that you got after the whole period, the 2 months, or you already knew at month 1 that 0 people was coming back?
I mean, we looked at the dashboards quite frequently, and it was really about, I mean, we let the experiment run, and we kind of pushed people also back to it to kind of see whether they would, it was just a, I don't know, kind of a misunderstanding, or they hadn't seen it or hadn't so we did try and kind of disprove any doubts that we might have in terms of those numbers.
Okay, so now my second question is, if after that month that happened with 0 people coming back, what's the reason why you decide to maintain the MVP, let's say, for 2 months instead of a month? It's because you agreed with that period of time at the beginning of the...
Yeah. So we had given ourselves that time, and so because we thought, actually coming back to it, because it's a while ago, I mean, there was definitely something we had set out at the beginning, and then we conducted the interviews, I think, during the second month. So we didn't wait. I guess we didn't wait fully till the end. We started the interviews because things were also already, and then the time it took to schedule the interviews were more towards the end. But yeah. So I mean, we didn't just sit still and twiddle our thumbs in the middle.
Well, I think when you have this kind of data, the only thing that you can go is with qualitative data, and you did right, with UX research and also with interviews. So you can, right now we don't have the strong numbers. We need, qualitative opinions about, what's not going well, what is the theory. And what important thing that you mentioned is that they were already using different tools to solve the thing that you already do. And sometimes you have, that's true, like this idea in your mind, like, this is going to be awesome. And at the same time, when you build it, it's like, it's costing too much. The bugs are outside everywhere. And at the same time, people don't like it because they need to build this habit of using the app instead of all the different things that they love, or maybe they're using in the regular basis. So it's important to do experiments. It's very important. So sometimes you can get great things, and sometimes you can get great insights, as in your case, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure. And it's about turning also the things you learn in that process. I think it's really helping us with the stage we're at now. So it's, it was a really helpful period to kind of learn a lot about our users' behavior. So it's definitely enriching to run these experiments. It's not just about proving and disproving, it's also, in general, you learn a lot, and it makes all of I think it helped us also on other products as well. So it was kind of a win-win in that sense.
Okay, that's good. Actually, that was my other question. Like, what was the outcome post-mortem? Now we didn't know, should we create a new thing? And you're telling me, no, we decided to build a different thing that is more suitable for people that's already working with our tools. Okay, well, that was super interesting. Actually, I think that when it comes to internal products, it is good to do this kind of experiments, and you have this like safe scenario where you can do whatever you want. When it's kind of tricky when you have B2C or B2B products, like even more harder. Okay, let me double check. Maybe we'll have any other questions here in the chat that I missed. Not here in LinkedIn. Let me check Zoom because I missed Fatima before, so maybe I missed another one. No, we don't have more questions. We don't have more questions. So Mansoor, what time is it? It's about time. Okay. Well, okay, so this is the end of the presentation. It was a good chit chat, and I think that you could learn a lot. And please remind this sentence, because to me it was super important. Reframing failure, super important. You will have the video uploaded in YouTube. If you can, and we will love you to have in our Telegram group. If you can join us to product management people at Meetup. And if you like it, you can support us on Patreon too. And remember, in case you are interested in knowing the job offers that we have right now, know that you can go to propeople.join.com to send your product manager application. Or if you're a senior business development manager, send this application to. We are looking forward to meeting you. Have a good night or day, depending on where you are located, and see you soon.